Rated M for mature.
I'm Phil, and this is Retro Rebellion. In this video, we're going right back to 1999 and the original Aliens vs Predator to find out what made it so scary. In the late 90s, the Aliens universe was peak blockbuster. Alien Resurrection had just come out in 1997, and on message boards there were always rumours circulating about an upcoming crossover movie featuring both the Aliens and the Predator, just like the Aliens vs Predator comic series that had been running throughout the decade. We'd seen plenty of licensed games featuring the Xenomorph, including an actual Aliens vs Predator game on the Atari Jaguar, but we hadn't explored that universe in a true 3D world yet, with polygonal models and real-time lighting. When Rebellion's Aliens vs Predator game arrived in spring of 1999, it immediately ticked the boxes of fans' wish fulfillment. It was in true 3D, with detailed models of the Xenomorph, Space Marine and Predator, and separate campaigns for each species in what was a breathtakingly lit and rendered engine for the time. But whereas previous games featuring these characters had sought to ape the movie material that inspired them, or forced themselves awkwardly around a popular side-scrolling format, AVP did neither. What it did was scare the utter out of everyone. When you're playing as the Marine, you're not shoulder to shoulder with other grunts giving you banter like they often appear in the movies. Instead, you're totally on your own, a small and fragile entity in a huge network of corridors taking on a huge task. Look at the scale of the rooms here. It's as though you're either a child or this facility was built for giants. You're not looking at a skyscape of outer space, but this slightly off feeling of scale makes you feel just as insignificant and remote as if you were. It also helps that there's almost no story, or at least no narrative cutscenes, and very little background music to tell you when there's a lull and when something bad's about to go down. It's a stark first look at the Aliens universe in 3D, and I think it's missions like this that really convey what a bold, forward-thinking vision its developers had, like a jazz musician and the notes that they don't play. The story moves through a lot of the same gears as the first two movies, from exploring the derelict spacecraft where the Nostromo landed to a boss fight finale with the alien queen on a loading bay. But in absence of other characters or cinematics pulling you out of the moment, the experience feels totally different to the films. This is about fighting for survival almost every step of the way, nothing more, and it doesn't need complicated exposition to make itself any more interesting. The easiest way AVP scares you in the Marine campaign is with its sheer difficulty. Even one Xenomorph can kill you in a few seconds if it gets near enough, and later encounters with Predators and hybrid Pred-Aliens are nearly impossible to get through the first time without dying. Even if you do survive the encounter, their acid blood often takes away the last sliver of your health. Facehuggers, meanwhile, mean instant death if they latch onto you, and they're almost impossible to see. But there are other ways the game's terrorising you besides the enemies themselves. Look how dark it is almost every step of the way for the Marine. Even when you throw a flare out, you can still barely make out all the corners of the room in front of you, and the iconic blip of the motion tracker sets your nerves on constant edge, even when there's nothing on screen to worry about. It's an audiovisual onslaught that uses the new 3D era not just to authentically convey that this is the Aliens universe, but to put you inside it in the most uncomfortable way possible. As the Xenomorph, you're not on edge because you're outnumbered by superior foes like the Marine, you're on edge because the whole experience of being a Xenomorph feels so alien. Look at the way the extreme field of view distorts your vision here, warping the walls of your surroundings to make it look otherworldly. And to add to that disorientation, the alien can climb walls and ceilings, so after a while you lose track of which way's up. With these simple but effective touches, the campaign really does feel like being a different species. And never is that underlined more effectively than when you visit areas you've already inhabited as the Marine, but fail to recognise for a while because your experience is so different. While one Marine proves no problem for you since your claw and tail attacks are so potent, fire-wielding enemies in groups really hammer home how brittle and expendable you are. You're just one grunt in a hive, and while that works brilliantly for the Xenomorph species, it's not so good when you're playing as the alien. Operating as the Predator is a bit like playing Superman in games. They're such an all-powerful, dominant force, so where does the entertainment come in? Firstly, there's an intrinsic kick to be had in seeing all the movie touches like that strange digital font translated into his HUD, and the authentic vision modes which you see from the Predator's perspective constantly in the films as he cycles between them in search of prey. That's turned into an effective mechanic here, since Marines and Xenomorphs show up differently in your different vision modes. If you're using the wrong one, you're all but blind to them, which suddenly makes the overpowered Predator feel beatable. And then there's the nature of looking at the world through these unfamiliar colours with strange, unreadable text at the edges, which again conveys that this is a strange alien place. Even if it is normal to the Predator, it's jarringly unusual to you, the player. While single Xenomorphs and Marines are no match for your futuristic firepower with the spear gun and shoulder cannon, often they arrive in such number that you're forced to think economically about your arsenal. Your shoulder cannon and spear gun don't hold much ammo, so you're often having to weigh up a fight and decide if you really need to spend ammo on it, or whether you can make it through with your claws alone. Whichever campaign you're playing, Aliens vs Predator never feels comfortable in the slightest. You always feel like the weaker species, always under-equipped to take on your surroundings, and always overwhelmed by the vastness of both your task and the environment. More than just ramping up the damage your enemies can give out and shrinking your health bar, AVP uses the tenets of that universe, light and sound we recognise so well from the films, to keep us permanently on edge, reminding us at every juncture that we're occupying a hostile space. A year after its release, Aliens vs Predator got an expansion pack called Millennium Expansion Pack, which added new levels, new weapons, and the ability to save mid-level. A compilation of the base game and expansion was released in the same year, known as Gold Edition, and then Aliens vs Predator Classic 2000, the version you find on Steam today.